previously backpacked through 37 different countries. I put this to a complete hold so that I was able to pretty much save a little bit more money there. It's little things like that that do definitely really count.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors to find out more about their stories, mindset, and strategies. I'm Taran Shum, and in this episode, we're speaking with Freda McGavin, who has adopted small changes in her life to make her property investing dreams a reality. Following her journey from Queensland mining boom opportunity to developing a diversified portfolio, you'll uncover how McGavin has secured long-term gains and why it's the little things that really make a difference. With such a varied and consuming schedule, McGavin notes the importance of planning and goal setting to make the most out of her time.
I am working for an LNG project plant as a trainee process operator. I do that half of the time, so I work 5 days on, 5 days off, and then in my spare time I look after my properties that I've got. Over the past 10 years, I've been able to attain 5 properties around Queensland.
With such a varied and consuming schedule, McGavin notes the importance of planning and goal setting to make the most out of the time she has.
I'm a trainee operator on Curtis Island. So if I am working, I'm up at 4:30 in the morning and I catch the ferry and I come home by 7 o'clock at night. But my days off look a bit different, consisting of really normal things like yoga, boot camp, stand-up paddleboarding, and of course working on my goals. So my goals are mainly to do with property. As I said before, I've got 5 investment properties. So mainly for me, it's a different type of story than your success story. My story is mainly about trying to keep these properties in the mining downturn that we have. So I've set up a whole heap of strategies and different micro goals to help me be successful in that sense.
McGavin's developing success was built upon the resources she had in only a short period of time.
I believe that I've changed over the past 10 years. When I was quite younger, I was a real go-getter. I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30, and I wanted to be retired by the time I was 35. But now I describe myself as someone who's quite resourceful with the tools that have been given to me, and I think a lot of the strategies that I've used can be helpful to everybody out there.
But for McGavin, as for many investors as well, her road to success was no easy stroll as she was affected by the mining downturn.
The Australian mining industry had changed quite considerably over the past 5 years. Properties that were returning $900 a week were now vacant. Coal prices went down. Oil prices went down and subcontractors lost their bids, a lot of things like that. So I'm not quite sure how the rest of Australia felt it, but Queensland definitely felt it quite a lot. And it wasn't just me, it was many, many people.
But McGavin's diverse history and passion for real estate gave her the resilience to deal with such adversity.
Well, I actually grew up in Gladstone. And then I moved away to Brisbane. In Gladstone, I was in real estate. In Brisbane, I was in property development. And then I moved over to London, which is said to be one of the hardest real estate industries in the world. And I was in property sales over there. So I've always had a love for real estate.
McGavin's flexibility, her willingness to evolve with changing circumstances, is what keeps her successful. Her determination to always put herself in the best possible position financially is what brought her back to Australia and then back into the real estate game.
I think the turning point was that I entered in the construction phase, and the construction phase was extremely high paying. So my goal for that was to attain a high-paying job so that I was able to purchase more properties, which I did at that point in time. However, construction always ends, and now we are in the operations phase. So I was very lucky to get a role in the operations phase post-construction, but of course that's quite a drop in pay. So that's why I've had to change my way of thinking to be able to deal with such a change with the mining industry and also construction coming to an end.
From a young age, the notion of property investment has always appealed to McGavin. So when the opportunity to make her first investment came along, she didn't think twice. But she hadn't let her love for property cloud her investor's perspective.
There was definitely an influence from my parents to get into property. Both of my parents held the power of saving money highly, and they gave me the tools to be generous, but also be careful with money. So from a really young age, I had read numerous books on money, investments and saving, but at the end of the day, I just personally have a love for beautiful homes, whether it's an old reno job or even a tidy apartment. And this is where my passion had just started. So really, at the end of the day, there's just nothing more inspiring than walking into a home with amazing character, charm, and design.
McGavin's investments have allowed her to chase the adventurous life she wants to live. Through diverse investing, she has been able to pursue her passions in the knowledge that her investments are safe.
So for me, it's all purely been investment properties. I was never really looking to settling down anytime soon. I've travelled through 37 countries on my own, lived overseas. So for me, I just wanted to purchase investments. I had tried not to put all my eggs in one basket by purchasing a couple of properties in the CBD of Brisbane, one in Hervey Bay, a coastal town, one in Gladstone, a industry town, and one in Blackwater, which is a mining town. So basically those are the types of properties I've looked at, and I've looked at extremely, extremely bland properties. So I have looked for ones that are close to transportation, close to shops, but I haven't looked at the ones that were massive mansions with all the latest appliances and an established amazing garden. I've tried to go extremely conservative, and I was hoping that would work out well. And it did. It worked out well because I was able to get a lot of tenants through the properties. I was able to get long-term tenants. And that's what you need. You can't just walk into a house and buy a property that you absolutely fall in love with, because at the end of the day, if it's for an investment, you won't be living there.
Initially, McGavin's relatively small capital left her with a few options for her first investment. So she made do with what she had and made significant personal decisions to her initial property into a solid foundation upon which she had built the rest of her portfolio.
It was a $150,000 three-bedroom home in Gladstone, where I am now. This property was purchased as an investment only, and at that time, the rent covered the repayments. So I did my own internal and external cosmetic works and landscaped the garden. And with the reno job, coupled with a rapidly booming mining town, I was able to sell the property shortly after for just over $300,000. And this is where strategy comes into place, because this property was actually the cheapest on the market in town at the time. I wasn't able to split my costs with a partner, and I didn't have a large deposit. And that was my only option. The bank wouldn't really let me take any other property that was of higher price. That was all I could afford at the time.
Coming up after the break, we discover how McGavin was featured in a popular publication.
A couple of years ago, I was approached by Australian Property Investor magazine, and they actually voted me as one of their young guns for 2013.
How a particular property that had performed well initially started to deteriorate.
However, this good luck doesn't really ever last forever. At the end of the day, it sort of became the sour apple in my portfolio as the mining sector declined.
And that's next. I'm Tyrone Shump, and you're listening to Property Investory. McGavin's willingness to commit to her decisions and follow them through has led to recent accolades and the wealth of experience she has now to offer to others.
I only found it online, so of course there weren't many properties that were at the $150,000 mark, so I just did an online search, had a look at it, and I thought this is my best bet. If I want to get into the property game, now is the time, and I did, and I've been really lucky. A couple of years ago, I was approached by Australian Property Investor magazine, and they actually voted me as one of their young guns for 2013.
Congrats on that.
And then last year I was also in another magazine for an update of different strategies like we will be discussing today on how people can get out of a rut or how people can do better in their home loans. It's not necessarily for people who are in trouble with their properties. It's for people that want to get the most out of their home loans, out of their insurance companies, out of their property managers.
But as the mining boom came to an end and economic circumstances deteriorated, McGavin faced real financial difficulty. A particular property that has performed well initially started to deteriorate.
Well, it was my Blackwater purchase, and I purchased this property while I was holidaying in Spain, while I was working in the UK for a couple of years. So the reason why I had purchased this property was simply because the rent was able to help support my other properties while I was away. It was able to pay itself off and support other homes that I had. And it was great at the time. However, this good luck doesn't really ever last forever. At the end of the day, it sort of became the sour apple in my portfolio as the mining sector declined.
But McGavin uses this experience to illustrate risk and, more importantly, how to respond to poorly performing investments.
I purchased the property approximately 5 years ago for $310,000. Now it's worth about $90,000.
Ouch. Okay.
So one thing people have to be careful of is when they're purchasing a property, they need to see what's happening around them. For Blackwater itself, after I had purchased the property, they started to construct camps for the workers to stay on. They started employing a higher number